Good morning, and thank you all for joining us for today's Business Support Series webinar, episode 27. I'm Mike Neal, President and CEO of the Tulsa Regional Chamber. The Chamber's Business Support Series offers insight on how your organization can. Please let us know. Before we go any further, I'd like to call attention and thank the sponsors of our Business Support Series. You see them listed at the bottom of your screen, Luxa Enterprises and Security Bank. I don't know about any of you, but I can confidently say that I'm an extrovert. Those who know me would agree that I'm about as extroverted as they come. I like being around people, and I like seeing my colleagues and friends at the office and around town. So while working remotely has been necessary to slow the spread of the coronavirus, it's been a tough new reality for me, and I know many of you. For women, there are additional emotional tolls from this new reality. Business leaders must be mindful of these tolls as well as their own privilege as we seek to support our female colleagues during these uncertain times. To discuss this topic, we have with us Dr. Meg Myers-Morgan, an award-winning author, college professor, keynote speaker, and certified executive coach. Her latest book, Everything is Negotiable, is a bestseller and has now been translated into multiple languages. Meg is an assistant professor at the University of Oklahoma and leads the graduate programs in public administration and nonprofit management on the OUT-Tulsa campus. She's also certified in executive and leadership coaching from Columbia University. Meg is currently the vice chair of the Tulsa Mayor's Commission on the Status of Women and past board president for YWCA Tulsa. Speaking of YWCA Tulsa, our second guest is Julie Davis. Julie's the CEO of YWCA Tulsa. Julie served as the organization's chief executive since 2017, having previously at Upward Trees and the American Cancer Society. She is a member of the Chamber's Board of Advisors and serves on multiple committees for other Tulsa area nonprofits, including Leadership Tulsa, the Community Service Council, and CAP Tulsa. Julie received her bachelor's degree from Drury University and her master's degree from the University of Tulsa. Ladies, thank you so much for joining us today. Meg will lead off with you.
Thank you, Mike. I want to start today by saying that in times like this, in times of crisis, we magnify what's already there. So we tend to talk about a pandemic as a disruption, but the pandemic isn't a pause from our normal, it's actually our normal magnified. So now we're seeing problems that are already existing within our structures and our organizations and in ourselves really clearly. So a crisis just brings our problems really into focus. And that concept, this idea that crisis magnifies what's already there, is especially important when we think about women in the workplace. So a crisis is going to magnify that gender divide. And that means that personal demands, which may or may not include childcare and elderly care, are going to be even more unbalanced. And overextending our female employees will be more obviously disproportionate, and overburdening women with more of the emotional labor of leading teams and people through the crisis is going to be even more further pronounced. So my work as an executive coach, which I do in tandem with my work as a professor at OU, has been predominantly made up of female clients. But when the pandemic hit, I was getting more calls and clients than ever before of women executives because they were suddenly very overwhelmed by this magnification of the normal. So based on working with them and just my own lived experience in what I call this crisis-focused professional world, I want to share 3 steps to consider when personally kind of approaching this time for us as a woman. So these 3 steps are: scan for resources, seek to be replaceable, and don't manage other people's feelings. So this first one, scan for resources. So studies actually show that as women rise up in the workplace, their personal demands become more, not less. So that means that as women get promoted, they also tend to carry more of the burden at home. So that might be childcare or household chores. And there's a difference of opinion on whether or not that's because women actively take that on out of guilt, or if it's a product of, a punishment for your success, the more women are asked to do, the more they're asked to do. So imagine in times of crisis how we magnify that overburdening of women in all aspects of their life. So what I suggest you do is to scan for available resources to assist you at work and at home. So 2 great examples for these resources to ask at work. The first is professional development funds and opportunities. And I recognize in this pandemic that there are financial constraints on certain industries and companies. But the overarching idea here is, how can you be invested in more fully? What do you need to do your job better? Do you need a coach? Do you need a training? Do you need a class? Women historically sort of wait for that to happen, wait for that to be given to them or offered to them. And I'm suggesting you need to figure out what it is you need to do your job better, and then ask for that. The second really important thing that pretty much every study bears out about women in leadership is the importance of a mentor. So who do you have in your corner to help you talk through all your concerns and more clearly see your opportunities? If you have a mentor, do they know that they're your mentor? Because I've had that happen to me where I wasn't really clear that I was someone's sort of official mentor. So you need to both declare that, but then also be meeting regularly and consistently. Mentorship is the same as taking vitamins or going to the gym. It's not going to help you if you only do it a few times a year. Great resources to ask for at home. A new trend that's happening that's been particularly led by women has been this quarantining, where you're teaming with other families that are practicing safe social distancing and sharing the burden of schooling or childcare or activities for the kids. So just make a list of the personal stressors you're having at home. One aha moment for me was switching from this phrase of needing help to I could use assistance. For me, that was helpful to kind of reframe what I was needing and to be able to ask for more. The second thing is to seek to be replaceable. Oddly, did I do that? Oddly, women have internalized this idea that we have to be replaceable. So for my first few years leading the program at OU, the biggest compliment I could get was, Meg, if anything happened to you, this program would go away. And that did wonders for my ego. This idea that if I left OU, there would be graduate students just like homeless on the streets without education, that really made me feel, important and needed. But in actuality, that helped nobody, least of all me. And by my unwillingness to train others around my work meant that I could never sort of move up at the university or move up in my career or have any shot at life-work balance. And so the key here is delegation. But the research will show that women actually delegate far less than their male counterparts. And more interestingly, when they do delegate, they do it much worse than their male counterparts. And the sort of working theory is that delegation is such an uncomfortable and painful feeling for women that they don't adequately spend the time training and transitioning other people to take their work. So the idea here is you're going to have to get really good at delegating and really good at making yourself replaceable. And in that doesn't mean that you'll be out of job. It means that you'll be able to either move up or remanage how you're doing your work. And then my final step is, I'm sorry, that's probably my fault. My final step is to don't manage the feelings of others. One of the heavily studied and admired aspects of women in leadership has been their empathy, their ability to work collaboratively, how good they are at accepting feedback and translating that feedback into action, far stronger than their male counterparts. However, what that leads to is women getting trapped by trying to manage the feelings of others. So research will point to the emotional labor that women take on, which is to say these emotions and feelings of the people around them. They're trying to manage their feelings. At the same time, they're trying to manage their productivity and their effectiveness of others, as well as just deal with their own emotions. So you can imagine during a crisis like we're in right now, anxieties are higher than ever. And I don't want you to misunderstand me. I'm not suggesting that women should become cold or unaffected by the emotions of others. If anything, I think everybody could stand to be much more open and receptive to those feelings. But I am saying that you shouldn't be working to manage anyone else's feelings, either by contorting yourself or extending yourself or making a move that might go against your best judgment in an attempt to control or mitigate certain feelings or certain reactions that are largely based in assumptions. So my suggestion here is a simple one. If you are sitting there either during this crisis or when this crisis abates, if you're fretting over a decision or starting a project, or if you should end a contract or whatever the case may be, just ask yourself, to what extent am I trying to manage feelings here? So those are the steps for managing ourselves, which we talk a lot about self-care for women. I like to think of it more of self-management. Self-care sort of talks about, I think in my mind, it seems like we should get a massage, which maybe we should, but I think this is all about self-management. And I think these 3 steps can help you during the pandemic and beyond. Mike, that wraps up my prepared portion, but I want to make it clear that if anyone wants to reach out to me about the research that I referred to or have questions, I would be open for that.
Meg, thank you so very much. Julie, let's go to you next.
Wonderful. Thank you, Mike. I'm so excited to be on this call and talk through these issues. I, as Mike mentioned earlier, I'm the CEO for YWCA Tulsa, and our mission is to eliminate racism, empower women, and promote peace, justice, freedom, and dignity for all. We have over 100 team members, 82% of whom identify as female. And so today I'm going to talk through some of the things our organization has done over the past few months to support our team throughout the crisis, and some of the ways we work to center women to ensure more equity across all of our team. Some of the things I'll share from my own personal experience as being a woman leader at this time, so I'll give some personal context as well. To start with, just a little bit about me. And, oh, sorry, I just wanted to make sure you could hear me. I am married, and my husband and I have 2 perfectly wonderful and mischievous little girls, a 3-year-old and a 6-year-old. My husband, Paul, is the executive director for a nonprofit called City Year. And so we have both had a truly fascinating and challenging year as we have been leading our organizations through crisis, as well as trying to keep crisis at bay at home through managing our 2 young children. I remember the first week after we had moved our entire team to work remotely. I had gotten up early to work one morning. I was powering through all of these plans for our organization as we were working remotely. And I had finished up. My children had gotten up. They were playing quietly in the house. I felt super productive. I was like high-fiving myself thinking, we've got this. This isn't going to be bad. Working from home isn't going to be a big deal at all. And then I got up, took a break, and went to get ready. And I entered our master bathroom and discovered that the quiet time my children had been having was my 3-year-old drawing with red lipstick all over the white carpet in our bathroom floor. And so that was whenever we realized that this was not going to be a walk in the park, and we were going to have to rethink our schedules, our structures. And so I think that, that was one thing that I experienced, but I know that families across the board have been experiencing so many things. And that was for those reasons, as we were going into COVID, and just as we set our organization, we really set some guidelines for our employees that I think also greatly impact women. And so I wanted to share a couple of those with you all now. So the first guideline that we really issued was around work flexibility. So right as soon as COVID happened, we actually gifted our employees 5 days of temporary paid leave, so 5 days of PTO, knowing that as team members were transitioning both through the stress and anxiety of what was happening in the world, trying to figure out new routines, people who are at home serving as caregivers, people who are at home taking care of their children, that giving that extra space to be able to take additional time as needed, or if you weren't feeling well, that we knew that would be important for our team. I also know that so many of our team members, again, most of them are women. The women often have been in the position where they felt like they needed to take over the kids' education during this time, or be the caregiver, or, as Meg was saying, take on some of those additional responsibilities. And so we were trying to think through what can we do to give our team that additional space, and then also create a flexible work environment. So we definitely encouraged our team to think through considerable schedules, considering what their plan and schedule might make sense the most for them, for their work commitments, and then given the ages of their children, what support they needed to be able to give their family, and so that they could have a flexible work environment. And depending on if they had a spouse at home or a partner at home who was helping with the childcare or the caregiving or the additional responsibilities, over and over on our team calls, we had staff who were just saying that just even the being at work at home was a different challenge in itself. And so really tried to create that flexible work environment, and then encourage team members to work with their managers to identify what their flexible schedule would be as they were clocking in, and that they could really consider, a more full work week if they needed to, and extend their hours throughout the weekend, just so that way they could, again, if they needed a few more hours during the day because they were either serving as taking care of their children or caregiver. And then we told team members to block off your time. Like if you know that, from 11 a.m. to 1 p.m. you have to be off because you have to take care of things at home, block off your calendars and let everyone else know that. So that way they can have that information and you can support that time. The other thing is that we tried to do as much as we can to remove those anxiety creators, and telling our team, it's okay to normalize kid sounds. And so when you're on a meeting, if you've got kids, just be like, hey, guess what? I've got kids. They may run in and out and I may be interrupted. And when our team members' kids come in, we try not to stop awkwardly. We'll say, hey, how are you doing? And, it's glad to see you. And we'll try to make it okay. Because otherwise it's a lot of anxiety, feeling like, oh, I need to get my kid out of the frame. I need to not be paying attention to my kid. I'm shooing my kid away. And so we tried to make sure that people, not to say that there weren't times where I was like, get out. But we tried to make it okay for our team members to normalize those sounds and not feel anxious. Like, this is not your fault. It's okay. We have kids, we have families, and that's life. And then we told our employees over and over to have patience and grace with themselves and their colleagues during this difficult time. And that, this is hard. We said over and over, this is hard. And we know that it's hard, and we're there with you. And, we want to be there to support you every step of the way. And then the last thing we did talk about was self-care, and as Meg was saying, self-management. But I sent out multiple emails to staff saying, make sure you're taking time for yourself. We actually implemented a health and wellness time period. So we told employees that every day you have 30 minutes to either go on a walk, utilize it for a group fitness activity, or we have virtual videos, like do a virtual group fitness video, do some kind of health and wellness activity, because we know you're sitting there all day, it's exhausting. Get up, move around, and that 30 minutes can be paid time of your day. We also tried to do some team activities like virtual charades. We watched mission-aligned movies together and chatted through them, to just give team members a space to say, okay, I can take some time for myself. This is, and really invest in myself as an individual and my health, and as a work person. We constantly say, you are the greatest asset we have. And if you're not taking care of yourself, we want to do everything we can so that way you can be healthy, happy, feel supported, and working here. So those are some of the guidelines that we had as an organization, and how we tried to invest in our team. I'll turn it back over to you, Mike.
Thank you, Julie. Thank you, Julie. Thank you, Meg. Julie, funny thing for those of us, I have two daughters. My wife and I have two daughters like you and Meg both do, and you spouses. For those of us who have daughters a little bit older, it's really fun to see people's kids. It may be embarrassing to you sometimes, but it's a blast for us to see kids come in and out and hear and see what.
Yeah. No, it's so true.
What they're doing, it's very entertaining. That's the new normal, I think, to some extent. But first of all, I want to thank both these ladies for the great presentations. I've got a few quick questions before we wrap. And the first one is, what are some common workplace policies that are more burdensome for women than for men?
Yeah, I'll just say, I think we've come a long way in terms of policies, such as naming like maternity leave, extending that to all parents. But I think it's almost the informal way that we work and we talk about this. If we set up an event where it may not be as welcoming for women, if we set up sports events, if work is getting done in these sort of informal contexts, I think that's where we see the problems. And so policy-wise, I think we've made strides. I think where we need to do additional work is that sort of informal way that we work and talk about and make assumptions about women in the workplace.
Yeah, I'll just add in, I think that one of the policies, and this is something that we organizationally are trying to adapt and work on, but I do think that sometimes whenever organizations have lumped that PTO or limited PTO and sick time, I think women are often the caregivers. And so a lot of times when kids are sick, when family members are sick, a good majority of the time, women are the ones who stay home and take care of those people. And so I think that sometimes like PTO policies or sick leave policies can be, if they're a little bit delimiting, if they don't also include space for that as well.
Yeah.
Julie, for male employees who aren't in management or supervisory roles, what practical steps can they take to be supportive of their female coworkers?
I would say a big one would be just recognizing it. And then there's always, if something happens in a meeting, going to that person later and kind of addressing that. You talked over this woman, or you did something that was that you may not have noticed. And then I'd also like to say, like, if the men could be less defensive. Anytime that we talk about privilege, I know that defensiveness is kind of our first response, but just listening to it, I say as women, we need our male allies, and we're not trying to sort of change that privilege. We're trying to just to get some of it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I think like Meg was saying, not getting defensive and being willing to accept feedback. I know we were actually working, it wasn't a staff person, but it was a male vendor this last year who in a meeting presentation was like, oh, the girls at our office, and it just hit our committee wrong a little bit. It's not always great. I mean, a lot of men wouldn't call, oh, the boys at my office. And so anyway, we talked about it as a committee, and then I just gave him a call and I was like, hey, I just wanted to let you know, moving forward, like when you're in meetings, it's probably best not to reference the women that you work with as girls. And just kind of talk through our thoughts behind that. And he was like, oh, you know what? Thank you. I really appreciate that feedback. I don't get that feedback very often, and that's really helpful for me. And so he was just able to take that feedback and utilize it. He wasn't like, well, I said that because he was so receptive, we were able to kind of move on from the conversation immediately. And it was great. So I think just, saying thank you and saying, okay, and just knowing that that's something you can do in the future.
Julie, we've got time for two quick questions. I'll ask you both to kind of give us quick responses so we can wrap in time. And the first one really has to do with the new demands and constraints and realities that have been brought on by the pandemic. What are some of the innovative ways you've seen companies accommodate their employees during these challenging times?
I actually kind of want to, if I can, turn that question a little bit, which is the most impressive work in this is actually, in my mind, not innovative, but fundamental. That when we really get back to remembering that people are whole and they have whole lives, and this is a very scary time. I have seen strides, especially in places like the YWCA, but for me, I think it's really these fundamentals of what kind of organization do we want to be, and how can we best show up for everybody and their whole selves in that space.
Great. Thanks, Meg. Julie?
Yeah, I think that, exactly what Meg said. Some of the things that we've been talking about are things that, we've started this now to help people get through a crisis, but what are some of the things that are being done, whether it's, efforts around the health and wellness for our team, or kind of giving team an additional flexibility? What are things that we can be doing now to that are things that really we should be considering more long-term and permanently. I think that working remotely, I think that the world is changing with the ability to work remotely and not having to travel as much. And so, and that may make it a lot more accessible for moms or women too, who may not have to have as much time to travel and be gone and things like that. So I think that's, it's changing the way we work.
Thanks, Judy. Yeah, the travel piece to me has been one of the most fascinating things, because I normally travel every week, and so suddenly, and I go to four events every night, and suddenly all those night events have gone away. So suddenly I have a life after 5 o'clock or after 6 o'clock or 7 o'clock or whenever that I never had before. Yep. So that's kind of fun.
Yeah.
My final question is to the two of you, and that would be, what's the biggest piece of advice applicable to both men and women to help find balance? You both referenced balance between the workplace and home life. What's the best way to work on that balance issue and help people with that issue?
I would say to trust yourself. If you feel overworked, I think my assumption is if I feel overworked, my next thought is it's because I'm not doing something right, or I'm not working hard enough. Or if I'm confused by something, it's I've not understood, or it's to trust yourself. If you're feeling overworked, if you're feeling frustrated, if you're not getting what you need, to trust those feelings and really kind of be vocal about them.
Thanks, Meg. Julie?
I think kind of, again, piggying on what Meg was saying, I think my instinct whenever I'm stressed out or feeling like there's a lot going on at work, is that my instinct is I have to work harder and I have to put in more hours, and that which just perpetuates the cycle of stress. And so I think that one of the things that both Paul and I talk about having to do is stopping, like the fact that you have to stop and take time for yourself. One of our personal trainers says stress plus rest equals growth. It's that idea that, if you continue to stress a muscle, it'll actually wear down, and it won't grow or build as a muscle. But if you work it, you push it, and then you rest it, then that's where the growth is going to happen. And so that's something that I have to remind myself.
I love that.
Yeah. 2 minutes remaining. I'm going to throw in one more question. It really has to do, speaking of stress, Julie, and that has to do with a lot of companies are beginning to bring people back into the office, or trying to get people back in the office. And that's stressing a lot of people, businesses as well as employees. And now with a spike in COVID, how do you counsel or coach businesses, employers, employees, et cetera, on how we try to figure out a way to stimulate the economy, but also maintain the safety for ourselves and our families and our customers?
From my perspective, it's not just that you're dealing with your employee, you're dealing with your employee's spouse, their potential children, and the stress, for me and my husband, we're trying to think about the fall and how, school is going to look, as well as my job, his job, distancing from our friends and family, that there's more at play than just how do I get this one employee back to work, but that they have an entire ecosystem around them that has been, tampered with as well. And just being mindful of that, and further kind of reiterating to the employee how that is a priority. What does your entire ecosystem need in order for you to feel good at work? Great.
Thanks, Meg. Julie?
Yeah, I think just as much as you can be transparent and inclusive of people in the conversation, one of the things we've done is every Friday, our HR director and myself have been doing We're Here, Let's Chats, and we just open up an hour on Zoom, and whoever wants to come in and join, and we'll talk about, what are your concerns? What are your worries? What are the questions you have at this time? And that helps us kind of frame some of the questions that we're asking our leadership team to address, because we're hearing from our employees who, and we said, anyone who has a concern, anyone who wants to show up, these are the topics we're going to be talking about, and that helps to people to at least feel like they've been heard. And then that also gives us a platform to say, well, these are the things that we're thinking about. Here's what we're talking through, so that way they can hear from our side as well.
Well, Julie, thank you. A special thanks to Dr. Meg Myers-Morgan and Julie Davis for joining us again today. I'd like to thank Luxa Enterprises and Security Bank for their continued generous support of this series. To anyone who came in late, called in by phone, or would like to share this webinar with a coworker or friend, a recording will be posted on the Chamber's website later today. If you found today's event valuable and would like to help ensure the Chamber can continue providing free informational programs like this to you, please consider making a donation to support our mission. A donation form is available at tulsachamber.com/support our mission. Before I sign off, I'd like to remind you all to please vote in next Tuesday's elections. There are several critical items on the ballot, including congressional primaries, legislative primaries, State Question 802 to expand Medicaid in Oklahoma. Tulsa voters can cast their ballots early today, tomorrow, and Saturday at the Tulsa County Election Board, and polling places will be open Tuesday from 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. So please take the time to vote. The future of our community depends on it and depends on you. And lastly, please don't hesitate to reach out to Chamber staff or to me personally if we can be of any assistance to you or your business as you are continuing to move this recovery process to the next stage while trying to maintain for the safety of your employees and your customers. So thank you again for joining us. Thanks again to our fabulous speakers, Julie and Meg. You guys did a bang-up job as always, so thank you. We look forward to seeing you all soon. Have a great rest of the day and a great remainder of the week. We'll see you soon.